Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another top 5 cards from Aether Revolt. So that means, of course, I'm joined again today by Chaz. How's it going, Chaz?
I'm doing well. We're back. This is exciting.
We're back, ready to talk some more Aether Revolt. So today we are going to be breaking down our top 5 white rares and mythics from the set, and we might as well jump right into it with a really unique angel. We have Exquisite Archangel, and this is a really weird one. It essentially keeps you from losing the game if it's on the battlefield when you lose the game. So Chaz, is there any chance to see standard play, or is this just a weird, fun, casual, maybe commander card?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the latter. Really fun casual card. Brad knocked it out of the park on this one. It's beautiful. The art is exquisite, really. That was a horrible pun. But I think everyone out there will love to play this card. And if you're a collector of angels, you're going to want to acquire this card. But it could be interesting as a kind of a reanimation target. I don't know if that ever comes to fruition in constructed formats, but it could be interesting to see if people come up with these weird interactions with really anything. So you don't see these triggers often on creatures. So I'm kind of happy to see this back.
It's a really unique effect, and I think it's really fun. It has potential to gain you a ton of life, especially in a commander game. If you die, you're likely at 0 life. That means you go all the way back up to 40. That's gaining 40 life. It's a little weird that it has to just sit on the battlefield, so your opponent can kind of see it coming. So if your opponent's going to try to kill you in a commander game, they're probably just going to try to kill the Exquisite Archangel first instead of letting it trigger and gain you back up to 40. The biggest vote against this card I've heard is Resolution Archangel exists, and it basically just restores your life total back to your starting life total. So it actually plays very similarly, and it's kind of similar mana cost and does a lot of the same stuff, and that never really caught on in standard. I think it might have been a one-of in some control deck sideboards. So maybe there's some fringe one-of applications in constructed, but definitely a big player for angel decks, for commander decks in general, potentially. So I think it's a really cool card, and I'm glad it exists, but not super excited for its standard potential.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and I think that's kind of where we both sit on this card.
Well, speaking of standard potential, I actually really like our next card, Aethergeode Miner. So this is a aggressive 2-drop that's really hard to kill. Is that enough to make this card into a standard staple, Chaz?
I'm going to date myself here, but this reminds me of Anurid Brushhopper. Then that was a bona fide staple when during Judgment was in standard. It's just really hard to deal with. You're absolutely right. And having the trigger be on attack rather than dealing damage is actually really relevant, because if anything were to happen to it in combat, you could just pay the 2 energy and you could blink it out. Obviously, it triggers, enter the battlefield abilities if you were to have anything like that. But yeah, the more I read this card, the more I really like it. It's just hard to deal with. It's self-sustaining, so it gives its own energy for its ability. So you don't even have to really build energy around this card. So it's just a really good, aggressively costed dwarf. And playing a Dapala after this just seems scary.
I think that's a really good comparison, except in some ways this is even easier. I assume having 2 energy, especially since this creates the energy, is probably less of a cost than discarding 2 cards from your hand, and you're still getting the 3 power in a 2-mana card rather than a 3-mana card, so I think this could actually be very good. It also triggers Revolt. It's a consistent way if you're looking to cast a Fatal Push and kill something that's bigger, or trigger your green Revolt card. There's some really powerful green Revolt cards that can be really big if you can trigger Revolt, and in standard it's kind of challenging to manipulate the game state so you have something that leaves the battlefield. But with Aethergeode Miner, it's really simple to just pay 2 energy and essentially trigger any Revolt cards in your hand for free. So maybe we can see like a green-white Revolt aggro list built around this card.
Yeah, so you can see how far we've come. So thanks for pointing that out. And you're absolutely right. It's much easier to take advantage of this the ability, and to continuously, like you said, trigger Revolt, trigger any other enter the battlefield abilities. All around, pretty good card.
Moving on to our next card, we have a way to deal with some of the powerful artifacts that are all over in Kaladesh. Consulate Crackdown. So, essentially a mass Oblivion Ring for artifacts only. Do you think this will see play beyond sideboards? I'm very confident it'll show up in sideboards. It looks like artifact decks are going to be a major thing in Aether Revolt Standard. Is it anything more than that, or is that basically what this card is, Chaz?
I think that's basically what this card is, and we mentioned this on the podcast. It's a great card to take out those pesky Colossus decks that are going to apparently be roaming the countryside everywhere in Standard. But yeah, I think it's pretty much delegated to a sideboard card, but a very good one at that.
So, what about Standard? Do you have any, or what about Commander, Chaz? Is this just a Commander staple, or doesn't it really have any appeal there? I know you've been getting more and more into the Commander format lately.
Yeah, I have. I think it's a good value card to have sitting around. Obviously, it gets better in these multiplayer games where you might, in a 1-versus-1 game, it might be a little weird to have this card, especially if they're not playing that many artifacts. But in a larger multiplayer game, it's assumed that someone's going to be playing some sort of artifact, whether it to be to ramp or just value artifacts or what have you. So this is a great way to get rid of those. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier to deal with as well, so that's kind of the drawback. So everyone can kind of get their stuff back. I don't know if there's anything that's better in that sense. I would have to really go back and dig deep. I think there's some really older cards that are comparable, if not better. But this is a pretty good card if you don't want to go back and dig through those cards and to find them, or if you don't have them to acquire.
Moving on to a really sweet one. We have Sram Senior Edificer. This is basically the new Puresteel Paladin. In some ways, it actually does a lot more than Puresteel Paladin, triggering on multiple creature types. So, Chaz, what do you think about this one in Standard?
I think it will have a place. Let me ask you, this kind of seems like a huge boon to the Aetherworks or the Aether something reservoir.
Aether.
You can tell I don't play all these combo decks, but this is a great way to get additional mileage out of all those Cathar's shields and all those 0-mana artifacts to kind of get that storm counter built up really quickly.
Yeah, I think if you're playing a Aetherflux Reservoir deck that's looking to use all the 0-mana artifacts, this is pretty much an auto-include. Really, we have seen Puresteel Paladin do some good work in Standard, in Fringe decks, but there were Puresteel Paladin decks, and people still try it in Modern, and I think this does a really good imitation, plus it hits on other types. Hitting on Aura means that it could theoretically show up in a Boggles type list, although Core Spirit Dancer is likely just better. Where I'm mostly excited about this card is in the Puresteel Paladin decks in Modern. I think that it could see play in Standard, although it has some weird types. I guess maybe you could play it as like a 1 or 2 of in vehicles list, even if you only randomly draw an extra card or 2 each game. It might still be fine because it's on curve as a 2/2, but in Modern, Puresteel Paladin is one of those decks that it is absurd when it's going off, and when it's going off is when it has a Puresteel Paladin on turn 2. So if you have a Puresteel Paladin in your opening hand, the deck looks really insane. You draw these cards, you win very quickly. However, if you don't have a Puresteel Paladin, you're playing a bunch of the worst cards in the history of Magic. So being able to play 4 Puresteel Paladins and 4 Sarams means that you actually have 8 Puresteel Paladin effects, which increases your consistency a ton. And I'm not saying it's going to make that a tier 1 deck by any means, but I think it makes that deck a lot more playable because it really fixes the deck's biggest problem, and that is just not having enough copies of Puresteel Paladin.
Yeah, I think the consistency it adds to that list is obviously great, and hopefully it does. I mean, I think adding another 4 or 3 or what have you to that list obviously is just going to be a great boon to that. In terms of Standard, you're right, and we mentioned this on the podcast. I don't foresee this being a 4 of unless you're going to combo around this card somehow. But even in like a vehicles list, like you said, it could just edge its way in there as a 1 or 2 of just to get some additional value out of the vehicles you're already playing.
Also, this feels like a potential Commander All-Star. I could imagine this being very good because it's essentially a Puresteel Paladin or a Core Spirit Dancer that can also be your commander, so you always have access to it, so you can just flood your deck with auras or equipments or even vehicles if that's what you want to do, and know that you're always going to have access to that card instead of digging through your 99 to try to find it. Well, let's wrap up our white discussion with Sram's expertise. So this one lets you make some tokens, cast a 3 or less converted mana cost card for free, so kind of like a reverse Yahani's expertise, essentially, almost exactly a reverse Yahani's expertise. So I asked you this before, Chaz, where does Sram's expertise rank in the hierarchy of the expertise cycle?
Is it Sram or Sram or Sram or whatever? I don't know at this point.
Don't worry, YouTube will let us know.
Are used to it already. But this is pretty powerful. At first, I think it's one that we did mention on the podcast, like 3/1/1s. It's for 4. But then you realize you still have Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. You have Ajani, the Oath of Ajani. So you have some really interesting plays to follow up with the 3 servo creature tokens. And like we said earlier in the series, there's already a couple of creatures that can play very well off these. Yahani was one of them. You have Syndicate Trafficker. So you have all these cards that can really benefit from the 3/1/1s. And then obviously getting even a Liliana if you're in those colors. So there's a lot of interesting plays you can make with this expertise.
Yeah, I think it actually allows for some really powerful things. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this is near the top of the expertise pile. It's not, I don't think, as good in Modern because it's a little more expensive than the red version. It doesn't really do enough for Modern when you have Lingering Souls and cards like that. They just make much better tokens for a cheaper price. But in Standard, it seems like a pretty good deal, and I could see it hearkening a resurgence of kind of go wide tokenless. My only concern is, on paper, the format looks really broken. There's not just one, but multiple potential turn 4 combo decks that could be very good, and if that's what Standard is going to look like, then making 3/1/1s on turn 4 just doesn't line up well with Emrakuls and Splinter Twins and all the crazy stuff that might be happening.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, you tap out on 4 to play Sram's expertise, and even if you get the kind of crazy value of Nissa, Voice of Zendikar or Oath of Ajani. But if you tap out for the expertise and they tap out for the kind of the Saheeli Splinter Twin or Aetherworks Marvel into an Emrakul, you're kind of going to be a little disappointed when you lose the game. So, but that doesn't really detract from the card. It is a pretty good card, and whether or not it might not be now, but at least in the future, it will still be in the card pool, and it can only still be just as good as it is now.
So that is our top 5 white cards from Aether Revolt. So, Chaz, what do you got on the top of your white card list? What's your favorite?
Give me the Aethergeode Miner. I love that card.
I really like Aethergeode Miner too. I'm going to go with Sram just because of the combo potential. I love me some Puresteel Paladin action, and I'm looking forward to bone sawing it up at some point, playing Sram alongside Puresteel Paladin.
Now, apparently, and I think this is a good way to end the white video for today, it was pointed out that is not like a tobacco pipe, that is not some cigar, as we were led to believe. I think it's a toothpick. So there you go. You get to clean your teeth, do some crazy combos, and I think that's right up your alleys.
Oh, well, that's been our top 5 white cards from Aether Revolt. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and big thanks to you, Chaz, for hanging out. And we will be back tomorrow to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll have to do it. See you all next time.